Hello, Ricky. Thank you so much for joining the Book of Love. How are you?
Doing great. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. What's the weather like in Calgary?
You know what? We actually have some sunshine and all the snow is melting and it's really beautiful here today.
You guys get summer way before we do. We just got another winter storm and we're not going to see summer until like end of March, but you guys get gorgeous at in like March.
You know what? We've been very fortunate and we've had very little snow this year. And we just got a little bit a couple of weeks ago, but it's all melting now. So yeah, we've actually had like almost spring weather for the last month. It's been pretty unreal.
I miss that. For everybody who's listening, I don't know if you know, but I did. I used to live in Calgary, and I went and got some Okanagan apple cider with Ricky, so that I could have like a little blast from the past for this recording. So just so everybody knows, I actually first saw Ricky on TikTok. It was probably close to a month ago. And the video that really caught me was your video about feminine energy. And so that's a topic that I really love talking about, which is why I was excited to bring you on. Now, before we get into all of that, for everybody who's listening, can you tell them a little bit about you, how you got into what you're doing, and what it is that you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So I help women reconnect with themselves and learn how to use their feminine energy to bring forward mature and lasting love. So one thing that I identified throughout my relationships was that I lived a lot in my masculine energy. And after a few broken hearts and a failed marriage, I came across masculine and feminine energy, and I dove headfirst into researching all about this. And I really identified that for myself in my love life, this was somewhere that I felt really held me back and was part of the root causes of some of my breakups. So yeah, so I decided to take that and bring it forward and start helping women reconnect with that side of themselves and then learn how important feminine energy is in dating.
And that was part of my journey becoming a dating coach too. And it was like a little epiphany for me. Now, I kind of know how I used to live in my masculine. And there's a lot of people here that are listening that still don't quite understand, or this is the first time they're hearing about the feminine and masculine energy in dating. How did the masculine energy manifest for you? Like, what were the actions that you used to do that were actually quite masculine? And then how could you be more feminine in that action?
Yeah, so I was always raised to be a strong, independent woman. And in the workforce, that was a really great thing. In parenting, that's a really great thing. And I think, throughout equality and things like this, women have really tried to be this strong, independent, woman who doesn't need any help. I don't need a man. I can, pay for all my own things. I, can do it all of myself. But for me, where this really manifested was when I would take charge in the relationship. So I always felt like, if he wasn't planning things, I needed to plan things. If he wasn't, initiating texts and dates, that I would be the one to step forward and do those things. And then that further went into my marriage by, becoming kind of naggy, right? Like there's ways that we can approach situations in the household from a really calm place where we can bring forward our feminine energy and actually have the masculine energy respond in a really positive way. Or we can come at it in a masculine, forceful, aggressive way, which then, if you're with a masculine energy man, you're just going to end up butting heads and fighting. And eventually you're going to come to a place where you feel more like friends than you feel this polarity of the two energies, drawing each other to each other. And I really feel like for me in my marriage, especially, this was one of the places that I identified as a root cause for, not being successful in that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, can you describe, because whenever I bring up feminine energy, whether it's in a boot camp or it's just one-on-one coaching, the first thing that the ladies think about is wearing dresses and having makeup on. And that's kind of where their mind goes to, and they really push against it. Can you just describe what, can you define what feminine energy is and maybe what masculine energy is and what that looks like in a relationship?
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I think one of the common misconceptions is that we always believed that feminine energy was female and masculine energy was male, and it was identified by, certain societal things that, like the dress and the makeup and things like that, that society kind of placed on femininity. But if we go a little bit deeper and actually look into the energy of it, we all possess both feminine and masculine energy within us. And we need both because there's times in our life when we need to be in our feminine, and there's times in our life where we need to put on our masculine hat, especially like I said, in the workplace or parenting. Now, for most women, not all women, but most women who feel that they are feminine, you'll find that you have about 80% feminine energy and 20% masculine. And, there is a sliding scale, but for the most part, a feminine energy woman has about 80% feminine energy and 20% masculine. And in relationships, we need this polarity of opposite energies to create long lasting love and attraction. Because, like I said, if we don't have polarity, we end up feeling like, either two dudes in a relationship or two best friends, and we lose that attraction, that spark that we once had. So, feminine energy can be described as feeling. It's very much involved in the body and feeling our emotions. It's about flowing, being full of energy. It's about love and emotion. It's about sensations and feelings and stimulated by praise. We also need reassurance and attention. And it's driven by creativity, communication, nurturing, multitasking. These are all very feminine energy traits. Now, masculine energy traits obviously is going to be the opposite of that, but masculine energy is very purposeful. They're very driven. They have direction. They're stimulated by change. They crave freedom and release. Feminine energy is all about being full, but masculine energy is about releasing or being empty. Masculine needs admiration and respect and appreciation. They're also goal oriented. They are love solving problems. They're more awareness based than emotion based. Problem solving, all of those are very masculine energy traits.
Wow, I always try to explain that, and I have a hard time because, like you, I naturally kind of just fall into my feminine because building a business and just, the life that I live, it's very do driven, and everything that you said was very much like how my life is being lived. But when I'm with my partner, I can perfectly fall into my feminine, because number one, I allowed myself to, and number two, he is able to hold that masculine space for me to do that. And it was funny this morning because I was about to leave and he's like, "Oh, you can leave without me. I got some stuff that I have to do before I get ready. So it'll be about another 5 minutes." I'm like, "Yeah, but I forget how to open doors when I'm in your presence because you open all of the doors, right?" So, and so I just hung out for 5 minutes. I was like, "I literally can," and this is a joke, you guys. This is like a joke, but yeah, I literally can't open doors when you're around because you open all the doors, right?
I love
So,
that. I love that. But you know what? That's one thing I think that women struggle with is because feminine energy is all about receiving, right? It's about allowing the masculine to step up and open the door and being gracious and thankful that they did that for us, I love that.
and the hardest thing about that is that in order to receive, you have to pause. You have to pause even just like a millisecond longer than is comfortable for you. Like
Absolutely.
when you're first dating, in order for him to go get the door, in order for him to potentially cover the bill, in order for him to kind of live in that masculine, you do have to train yourself to pause just a little bit.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And on the flip side of that, we have to be sure to recognize and appreciate and be receptive to those things that they do for us, right? Like if he goes to pay the bill, and obviously we should pay the bill. Sometimes I do not think that the man always needs to pay, but if he goes to pay the bill and every time you're like, nope, 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 eventually he's going to be like, well, she doesn't need me, right? And one thing that masculine energy needs is, one, they need to be appreciated, but two, they need to be needed. And if they feel like they can't make you happy or they're not needed by you, eventually they're going to walk away.
Totally. Well, one thing that's kind of between the two feminine and masculine that I would love for you to kind of talk about is you said the feminine is stimulated by praise. And then you said that the masculine is needs to have admiration and respect. Now, how do those two differ when you're speaking to one another? So if a masculine is going to give praise to the feminine, what does that look like? And if the feminine is going to give admiration and respect to the masculine, what does that look like?
Yeah. So if you go back to doing versus feeling, right? So the man wants to be praised for his doing, he wants to be praised for his actions. So letting him know that you recognize that he, even just the little things, did the dishes or, took the initiative to plan the date or, these doing and action oriented type things, that is going to spark in his mind a bigger sense of, feeling proud than complimenting him on his looks. And I'm not saying that guys don't like to be complimented on their looks, but for them, they want to be praised on the things that they have done or that they are doing or the ways that they're contributing to the household or the relationship. Whereas the feminine energy, we're much more free flowing. We want to be seen. We want to be understood. So if he is giving us, appreciation in a way that's making us feel seen. So I know it sounds vain, but we want to feel beautiful in our partner's eyes, right? So letting us know that he thinks that we're pretty is such a big thing. And not only that, but seeing the work that we're doing, right? Like the things that we're doing in our career, the things that we're doing around the home. We also want to feel safe and understood. So even just him listening to us and feeling like he understands what we're going through in our emotional body, even though maybe he doesn't, but he's there to support us in that way. That is the type of praise that we need. So, it's yes, praise and admiration are very similar words and have a similar meaning, but it all goes back to that, the doing and the feeling.
Mm. So if there's a listener that really does want to get a little bit more into her feminine when she's dating, and she's not dating now, but she's going to be moving into the dating world here shortly, and she wants to do it a little differently than she's done in the past, what is a great first step for her to start getting into her feminine, start feeling that even before she goes into the dating world so she's ready? Like, what are some good first steps for that?
Some really good first steps. I know it sounds kind of cliche, but to spend some time in nature, also to spend time with other women, communicating, because a big thing that feminine energy is release, right? We want to fill ourselves up with communication while letting go of our emotions. So also doing the healing work to repair things that have maybe pulled us away from our feminine energy in the past. One thing that really helped me in my dating life was identifying past traumas that I had in past relationships and ways that it pulled me away from my feminine and starting to repair those. Allowing yourself to heal, allowing yourself to go through that process of letting go. Things like dancing or movement, finding movement that you enjoy really. Feminine energy is all about free flowing, right? So getting into movements like yoga or dancing or things where we're moving and we're moving our energy, this brings us back to our feminine. But more than anything, spending time in nature, taking your agenda away, taking your goals away, and just going with the flow and learning how to be in the moment is so imperative, is so crucial to feminine energy.
Absolutely. You know what's really interesting for me when I first started getting into my feminine? What was the big changing point for me, which was a little odd, was allowing myself to live in the chaos because I was so structured in my, like you said, calendar, my schedule. And when I would plan a date, I would like text them a day out, being like, okay, we're still on and this is where we're, you know what I mean? It was so scheduled that when I really started dating and dating in my feminine, I allowed myself to live in the chaos, which was more like, just kind of going with the flow, not having everything planned. We didn't follow up that morning. He might be there, he might not. That's exciting to see if it's going to happen. You know what I mean? So allowing myself to be there and also realizing that I cannot control all of it. And it was even if, for example, he didn't show up because we didn't follow up, I just sat there and had a glass of wine and enjoyed myself and talked to the people around me. And I felt that was more in tune to my feminine and just kind of going with the flow than when I would plan everything to a T.
Absolutely. Letting go of control was one of the biggest things that I had to do to live more in my feminine energy. I always felt like I needed a plan. I always felt like we had to stick to the plan and, like you said, confirm and check and there was no room for going with the flow. And I think that's one big thing in dating is that we worry a lot about the future, and future is very masculine energy. So when we go into a date, you know, instead of just going into the date thinking about having a good time and getting to know the person across from you, we go into it with our future planning, and we're thinking boyfriend, we're thinking husband, we're thinking babies, we're thinking so far ahead of just being in the moment and getting to know the person right across from us. And that is one of the most powerful things that we can do in dating with our feminine energy, is to just go with the flow and have fun. And masculine energy feeds off of that, because they are so structured and they are, you know, so future thinking already. When we go in with this in our mind, they get a little put off because they're like, ooh, this doesn't feel, you know, what I thought it would feel like. And then they kind of like pull back a little bit because they can feel your agenda, right? Masculine energy knows when you're in your masculine.
It's actually, I have become so appreciative of men and their masculine and how really, and they don't get enough credit for this, how intuitive they are to the energies of a woman. As a matchmaker, I show profiles and a picture. That man, if I were to just show, you know, a relatively attuned man, if I were to show him a profile, he would know if she was confident. He would know if she was able to live in her feminine. He knows all of this from one selfie of her head. And that's it. And he would be able to pull all of that out. And I was blown away because then he's saying, oh, she doesn't seem very confident. I'm like, my gosh, how did you know that? You know, because I knew her and he didn't. So it's really quite shocking. And okay, so I want to get into another topic too that you discussed. And I don't know if it was a recent TikTok video. By the way, if you don't follow her on TikTok, you have to. Her TikToks are amazing. They're like pure training. How can people follow you on TikTok? We're going to do this in the middle of the episode because you guys have to go watch it right now.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much. Yeah, you can follow me at Rikki Diamond, which is RIKKIDYMOND.
And the video that you were talking about was how men need freedom. And you were also saying the masculine needs freedom. And, you know, as women, when we meet a man, or in our feminine, we meet a man and we want them, like we're like, yes, this is the person that I want. Our first instinct is to lean in. And that puts pressure on his freedom, which makes him pull away, right? So can you talk about the importance of freedom and what that looks like in the early stages of relationship with a man?
Yeah, absolutely. So, what this actually really comes back to, and I heard this term used, I think it was last week, and it's called mama drama. So, this is usually an unconscious fear that men have, but men have this fear of being controlled or smothered. And if you think about the strong motherly presence that mothers have over their sons, right? They're always telling them what to do, what to wear, how to sit, how to stand, do better, do this, do that, right? And so they have absolutely no freedom, as everybody does as a young child. But men especially find it harder to break free and pull away to create their own identity. And once they have this identity of their own, they really want to keep who they are, you know, especially if they're in their, if they're very masculine energy, right? And so I think what women tend to do unintentionally is we become their mothers, right? And this is a big trigger for men. So some of the things that we do in the early stages of dating is that we lean forward or we try to take the lead. And you did just touch on this. And this is like filling the space. So if he hasn't texted, you text him. And there's nothing wrong with initiating conversations some of the time, but in the very early stages of dating, we want to leave room for courting, right? Like it's really important to go through these stages of dating and to let a masculine man court you. He wants to feel like he is chasing. He wants to feel like he is making the decision, and he wants to feel like he wins the prize. And you are, you know, this beautiful feminine energy prize that he wants to win in the end. And if you are not leaving any room for him to do any of these things, if you're constantly texting, if you're constantly following up, if you're constantly, hey, when are we hanging out next? It leaves no room for him to step up in that masculine energy. Another thing that we do is we like to help. right? Women like to help. We want, and in our minds, feel like maybe we are showing them or teaching them things, but it's really important, especially in the beginning stages of dating, that we let him do things his way. Even if we think that our way is faster, better, more economic, whatever it might be. It can be little things like you're making dinner together and you don't like the way that he's chopping the vegetables. And I'm totally guilty of this. And that's why I'm using this as an example, not letting him do things his way. Because as a masculine man, he's a doer, he's a leader, and he wants to be able to, be his own person. Also, restricting them from seeing their friends or complaining about when they want to spend time with other people who are not us, because this one is controlling, but two, this really takes away from his freedom, which we already spoke about, right? He wants to be free to have the life that he wants to live, to hang out with the people that he wants to hang out with. And this is really important because when a man has freedom, when a man has space from you, this is actually when he starts to fall in love. And it's really important to give him this time to miss you, to think about you, to think back on the experiences that he shared with you. Again, doing, right? Experiences are so important to masculine energy. And if we're, not allowing him to have this time, it's also a good time for men to recharge their testosterone, to recharge their masculine energy. Just like for women, when we need to be with our community, talking and venting and living in our emotions, masculine energy needs to go and empty. He needs to go and empty himself out, and he needs to be with his bros, and he needs to recharge his testosterone and his masculine energy. So I think those are some of the most important things in the beginning stages.
Yeah. So just be careful when you're touching that. We can kind of hear that over the video. Yeah. Do you want to just say that last sentence again so we don't hear that in the audio? I don't know if you remember what the last sentence was.
I don't.
The men needing to. Yeah. Yeah, just start like with the men needing time to build testosterone, even if it's a little bit further back. We'll start that again.
Okay. So it's really important to give them the space and the freedom and the time to recharge their masculine energy, to recharge their testosterone, just like women need to hang out with our community and vent and express our emotions and live in our emotions, fill our cup. Men need to empty. They need to empty their gas tank, empty their cup, and just be with their men so that they recharge all of this energy.
Okay. So this leads into, actually, I think you were talking about it a little bit. And if we could like emphasize that again, I think this was one of your videos of how men fall in love is doing things with you. And then they fall in love by, I guess, thinking of you when you're not together, right? So was that your video?
Yes,
Yes,
exactly. Yes.
it was. Now let's talk about the doing things, because what I found was fascinating when I became a matchmaker is that women are looking for all of these qualities that make up a great partner, and all of the qualities that make up a good husband and father of the children. There's like so much there, but when men come in, they're like, I'm a heavy duty surfer, I just want a surfer chick, or I love going skiing out in Whistler and like backwoods. I would love someone to go skiing with. It's sometimes I feel like it's like, well, that's just so easy. Like you just want a skier, like that's it. You know what I mean? So is that like the doing of it that they can just kind of come to terms with in their brain? Like what is the doing and what does that look like?
Absolutely, absolutely. Men bond through shared experiences. So they bond through having meaningful and fun moments with you. And this is why the early stages of dating, it's so important to throw your agenda away and to go into these dates with fun in mind. Because if you can go into this and you can have a great time, and he's like, oh my gosh, this girl is so much fun, she is different than other girls that I have dated. And when you're with him and in these moments and he's just having such a good time, he's looking over at you like, oh my gosh, like where has this girl been? This is so much fun, I've never experienced dates like this before. And then the second part to this is when you're not together and we're not texting him and we're giving him space, we're giving him room to step up. He starts thinking back on these experiences with you, and he starts thinking, okay, yeah, she is different. This is different. And the more he thinks about you, the more he starts to catch feelings. And this is where the love starts. So it's two parts, right? It's in the time they have with you, it has to be memorable and fun and enjoyable. And then the time that he's not with you, he thinks about you. And it's when he's thinking about you that he realizes that, hey, she really is different. And I want to experience more things with her. And then he plans another date.
I love it. And that's kind of what I'm teaching as well, is a lot of openness to whatever is happening. I mean, it's so hard for women when sometimes we're very, very scheduled to be open to, something that maybe is outside of our comfort zone. But if you so badly don't want to do that, maybe it's not a good fit for you, because, that would be something that he would enjoy doing. Now, I wanted to kind of go back a little bit to what you're talking about in regards to being the mother. Now, one trend that I've seen, and I think you would have really good perspective on this, one trend that I have seen in powerful women that say have really amazing HR jobs, they own their house is gorgeous, they have their car, they have a great group of friends that they've been friends with like their whole life, and they're just, everything is completely settled. But what they're attracting men that don't add value. They're not attracting the partnerships. They're not attracting the masculine. And what can you say to those women? Because everything that they've accomplished is amazing. To buy your own house, to have that amazing career, and to have those amazing friendships and family relationships built. But the one thing is missing is partnership. What can you say to those women to give them peace of mind that what they're doing is okay, but also things that they can do different so they can attract a strong partner?
Yeah, absolutely. There is absolutely nothing wrong with a driven woman, a woman who is successful, a woman who has bought her own home and, doesn't need some financial support from a man. That is so powerful. However, to get there, she probably had to live a very masculine energy life in order to achieve those goals and reach that type of success, which is great. And I think the biggest thing for women in these type of positions is learning how to switch from masculine to feminine, right? And we can easily switch into feminine when we're with our girlfriends. It comes out of us so naturally because we're around other feminine, we're communicating, we're hanging out, that type of thing. But it's learning how to bring yourself back to that when you are on a date or when you are communicating with men. And I think the biggest thing, like I said, is just learning how to move through your emotions, learning how to move through your body, and learning how to feel, because feeling is such a big part of feminine energy. And even just starting with something as small as feeling statements, because a lot of women who are, living in their masculine have moved away from their emotions, have moved away from feeling. So learning how to say, I feel safe, I feel hurt, I feel loved, I feel anxious, whatever it is, and just learning how to identify feelings, I think is the first thing, because feminine energy knows their emotions, they know their feeling, and we know how to communicate our feelings. So starting to take those feelings that you're feeling and voicing them, that's the first step in really, really connecting with that feminine side.
I love it. See, as a woman who's been living in her feminine for far too long, that gives me like oh, that's so uncomfortable. Tuning into the feelings of it. Oh my gosh. That's so not logical, Ricky. That's so not logical. Oh, I love it. So I always like to give as many tips as we can to the listeners. And we also have some male listeners here as well. Do you have a little bit more of a description of what masculine energy looks like on a first date? Would you be able to describe a couple of those qualities and what that looks like when a gentleman is on a first date?
Yeah, so masculine energy when it's on a first date, if you have a strong masculine man, he will take charge right away and he will lead the way. So he will get you off of the dating apps that you're on, or he will ask you for your phone number. He will reach out to you and let you know that, he's still interested. He will plan the date. Whether they follow up or not is just depending on him. He will choose where you're going. He will likely want to pay for the date. He will put his best foot forward. He will have, things that he wants to talk about. A lot of men who are very masculine will want to talk about, doing type of things. They'll want to talk about their careers. They'll want to talk about their extracurricular activities. They'll want to talk about things that they've achieved or accomplished. These are all very masculine energy things. And if you have a man who is taking the lead, let him lead you. It's
It's
one of the
hard.
yeah, it's so hard. It's so hard. It's so hard. But you know what? That's another thing on the flip side of that is also, even though we're letting him lead, we still want to have our boundaries and we still want to have an opinion. If he is leading you in a way that is so not how you feel inside, or something that's against your morals or your values, or food that you just, completely don't eat. A masculine energy man really, really respects a woman who has boundaries and standards. And if you're able to express these in a really kind and profound way, it will elevate you, and he will respect you so much more than someone who just
That's
goes along with everything.
That's amazing. I love that you just brought up boundaries because that's something that is tricky to do because it almost feels like it's a masculine thing, but it's so necessary in the early stages. So, and to be able to do it properly is important as well. So, when setting boundaries, it's important to start small. Like starting small with like, "Hey, we should try this." It's like, "No, I don't eat cheese." "Oh, come on, try it." It's like, "No, like I really don't eat cheese." You know what I mean? And men really enjoy being challenged as well, not in an abrasive way, but challenged in the fact of, for example, if they say something off or they use a word that is inappropriate, for you to tell them like, "That's actually not the best way to do that." Now, is there a really great way to set boundaries femininely, or is that just a masculine thing that we move into just to kind of move through that?
Yeah, that's a really great question. So we can always come back to feminine energy in regards to our boundaries by coming back to feelings. So as I mentioned, feeling statements, and that's one really good way. And just to stay positive. So even though you have something to say, and sometimes we feel nervous expressing ourselves, or we feel like, hey, if I set this boundary, or if I tell him, no, I don't like this, it's going to turn him off or whatever. It really honestly does the opposite. And in a masculine energy man, it makes him respect you. Thing that you could say, or an example of what you could do, is you could say, I really appreciate that you took the initiative to do XYZ, but I feel like for me, this goes against my values, my morals, or for me, I feel like this just isn't something that I would like to do. But starting with the appreciation. So I really appreciate that you took the time to do that. But I feel like, and then going into your feeling statement. And we always want to keep our feeling statements about us, not like, I feel like you're a jerk, or I feel like you did this, or because that's one thing that we can tend to do, especially once we're in a relationship and we get into a fight, is start pointing the finger. But feeling statements are directly about how you feel. And so, using the appreciation part of it and then countering it with your feeling and setting the boundary at that moment is a really feminine energy way to set that up.
Oh my gosh, that was so amazing. When I was asking the question, I was like, "Oh my gosh, is there actually an answer to this?" And you had it. So that was amazing.
Awesome.
Okay, so one thing that I've been thinking about lately is opposites. So we know that feminine and masculine energy, that polarity definitely attracts. But when it comes to two individuals, and this is just a personal opinion that I would love for you to give, do you think that opposites truly attract?
I love that you asked this question, because I actually just recorded a TikTok talking about this that I haven't quite posted yet. So I absolutely love that you touched on this. And yes, we need the polarity of opposite energies to ignite and maintain attraction and connection. It's like the yin and the yang, right? Like if you think of that yin and yang symbol, it's that opposite, that black and that white. Now, this is talking about energy. We need that opposite energy to create polarity and attraction. That's what we've been talking about this whole time. However, when it comes to personalities, values, morals, lifestyles, all of these things where we want to find commonalities, if we don't have those common interests or common bonding moments of things that we have that are the same or very similar, it'll be very hard to stay together long term. We'll always feel like we're compromising, or we'll always feel like we're giving up something just to be with this person, because, we don't link up on all of these other things. So, yes, I feel opposite energies attract, feminine energy, masculine energy. Absolutely. But when it comes to lifestyle, personality, values, morals, no, absolutely. I feel like we need to have someone who is similar. They don't have to be the same, right? It's impossible to find someone who is exactly the same. And yeah, maybe I like yoga and my boyfriend likes football and we don't really connect on those things. So there are going to be some things that are not the same. But one thing I like to say is that it's our commonalities that pique our interest and bring us together, like, oh my God, we have so much in common. But it's our opposite energies that bond us and keep the passion alive long term.
Absolutely. Now, I would love to hear a little bit about your perspective. Now, I didn't prompt you this with a question, but I would love to hear your perspective on modern day dating because, yes, when we're approaching people on the street or we're meeting them at the bar, we've met them even briefly before a date, you can pick up on the energy and you can pick up on the attraction. Now, where does this come into, say, like online dating and modern day culture? Like, how can we bring across that energy in, say, a profile or how we're conversing with somebody prior to ever meeting them?
Mm, that's really tough to do. And this is one of the reasons why I always tell people to meet in person as soon as you can, because it's so easy to, put yourself forward when you're behind a screen or when you're behind a phone, right? And so in order to really feel that energy from someone, I feel like we need to be in person. And I think a lot of people get caught in these pen pal relationships that don't end up going anywhere because they're just constantly texting, and next thing, a week, 2 weeks, a month fly by and you're still in this texting or things just fizzle out. So I think meeting in person is really important. Now, to portray yourself in a way that is feminine or masculine would really be going back to those things, feeling right. So when you put up things in your dating profile, you want to talk about things that are very feminine to you, but also are going to pique the masculine, right? Like you want to find those opposite things.
I really appreciate that perspective. Now, we're going to finish off. That just flew by, but we're going to finish off. And I always like, okay, so if Ricky could leave like that, conventional single person that's grinding it out in the dating world, really looking for partnership, that one piece of advice from this podcast, that one thing to leave here with, what would it be? What advice would you give?
So if I could leave one piece of advice, it would be to really get to know yourself, to really spend some time with yourself, to maybe even take some time off of dating and really get to know who you are. What do you want out of a partner? What do you want in your life? How can you be more feminine if that's something that you feel would be beneficial to you? Really get to know yourself. Be really confident in who you are, develop self love, develop self care. And once you have this really built up version of yourself, you're going to start projecting what's called high value. So when you feel that your worth is elevated because you've taken that time to get to know and love yourself, you are going to be projecting yourself as a high value person. And high value or high value energy attracts high value energy. And the energy that you are putting out is the energy that you are going to pull back in. So get very clear on who you are, get very clear on what you want. And then when you go into dating, have your boundaries, stick to your boundaries, but above all else, have fun. Just know that dating is a process. You will need to date multiple people before you find someone who fits with you. So just go into it with fun in mind. Go into it knowing that it's going to take time, that you're not rushed. Don't rush. Be patient. Patience is key when it comes to dating.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And thank you so much for joining us on the Book of Love today.
You're very welcome. Thanks for having me.